What's going on, YouTube? Thank you for coming to my channel. My name is Wally, and you are now tuned into Playboy Hustlers TV.
This the king of melodies beat.
I got some more time in Sowell. This one right here is going to be diving into some why minimum wage is bad for workers. You understand? Well, we're going to let him digress. Let him explain to us as he know best. I did not mean to rhyme, but I do that all the time. I'm sorry. It's just my nature. You understand? I'm an artist. True at heart, baby. Alright? So with that being said, let me stop wasting your time. Mine's as well. Let me go ahead and press play. You sit back and react, baby. Let's go.
Minimum wage laws make it illegal to pay less than the government-specified price for labor. By the simplest and most basic economics, a price artificially raised tends to cause more to be supplied and less to be demanded than when prices are left to be determined by supply and demand in a free market. The result is a surplus, whether the price that is set artificially high is that of farm produce or labor. Making it illegal to pay less than a given amount does not make a worker's productivity worth that amount.
That is a fact.
And, if it is not, that worker is unlikely to be employed. Yet minimum wage laws are almost always discussed politically in terms of the benefits they confer on workers receiving those wages.
I never understood why people fight for minimum anything. I want maximum. Maximize my pay. You hear me? Don't minimize it.
Unfortunately, the real minimum wage is always zero, regardless of the laws.
Wow.
And that is the wage that many workers receive in the wake of the creation or escalation of a government-mandated minimum wage, because they either lose their jobs or fail to find jobs when they enter the labor force. The logic is plain, and an examination of the empirical evidence from various countries around the world tends to back up that logic, as we shall see. Because the government does not hire surplus labor the way it buys surplus agricultural output, a labor surplus takes the form of unemployment, which tends to be higher under minimum wage laws than in a free market.
You see this right here? Hey, look, listen. We all need to study macroeconomics. You understand what I mean? We need to stop reading these trash books that we read in sometimes that will distract you from real life. And we need to know about the economy, everything economics, baby. Listen, we're going to go into a world right now full of robotics. You understand what I'm saying? So a lot of jobs that were a thing, they're going to be obsolete. They're not going to be a thing anymore, man. I'm telling you, don't be scared, but be prepared, all right?
Unemployed workers are not surplus in the sense of being useless, or in the sense that there is no work around that needs doing. Most of these workers are perfectly capable of producing goods and services, even if not to the same extent as more skilled or more experienced workers. The unemployed are made idle by wage rates artificially set above the level of their productivity. Those who are idled in their youth are of course delayed in acquiring the job skills and experience which could make them more productive, and therefore higher earners, later on. That is, they not only lose the low pay that they could have earned in an entry-level job, they lose the higher pay that they could have moved on to and begun earning after gaining experience in entry-level jobs. Younger workers are disproportionately represented among people with low rates of pay.
And to think about that, how a lot of these crazy ways and these rules were created so long ago that till today they still enforce these. That is powerful right there. That's what it's all about, baby. Control, power, manipulate.
Only about 2% of American workers over the age of 24 earn the minimum wage.
What?
Although most modern industrial societies have minimum wage laws, not all do. Switzerland and Hong Kong have been among the exceptions, and both have had very low unemployment rates. In 2003, The Economist magazine reported Switzerland's unemployment neared a 5-year high of 3.9% in February. Back in 1991, when Hong Kong was still a British colony, its unemployment rate was below 2%. Although Hong Kong still did not have a minimum wage law at the end of the 20th century, in 1997,
It was eating.
new amendments to its labor law under China's rule mandated many new benefits for workers to be paid for by their employers. This imposed increase in labor costs was followed, predictably, by a higher unemployment rate, that reached 7.3% in 2002. Not high by European standards, but a multiple of what it had been for years. In 2003, Hong Kong's unemployment rate hit a new high, 8.3%. Higher costs for a given quantity and quality of labor tend to produce less employment, just as higher prices for other things tend to produce fewer sales.
I feel like they never gonna get that right. I'm gonna be honest with you. It's working so much in their favor, it makes no sense to get it right for them.
Moreover, higher costs in the form of mandated benefits have the same economic effect as higher costs in the form of minimum wage laws. The explicit minimum wage rate understates the labor costs imposed by European governments, which also mandate various employer contributions to pension plans and health benefits, among other things. Europe's unemployment rates shot up when such government-mandated benefits to be paid for by employers grew sharply during the 1980s and 1990s.
I mean, if you're forcing them to do that, of course they're gonna start letting people go.
In Germany, such benefits accounted for half of the average labor cost per hour. By comparison, such benefits accounted for less than one-fourth the average labor costs per hour in Japan and the United States. Average hourly compensation of manufacturing employees in the European Union countries in general is higher than in the United States or Japan. So is unemployment. Comparisons of Canada with the United States show similar patterns. Over a 5-year period, Canadian provinces had minimum wage rates that were a higher percentage of output per capita than
Imagine that in the U.S.
in American states, and unemployment in the United States show similar patterns. Over a 5-year period, Canadian provinces had minimum wage rates that were a higher percentage of output per capita than in American states, and unemployment rates were correspondingly higher in Canada, as was the average duration of unemployment.
Another thing too, you know when they always start taking statistics, I know they do the census and everything like that, but listen, I haven't signed anything, been questioned or nothing. So when they talk about, oh yeah, the people are saying, listen, I'm not part of that class, all right? Stop playing with your boy. This is crazy. The more you go into it, the more you know, it gets crazy.
While the Canadian rate of job creation lagged behind that in the United States. Over this 5-year period, 3 Canadian provinces had unemployment rates in excess of 10%, with a high of 16.9% in Newfoundland. But none of the 50 American states averaged unemployment rates in double digits over that same 5-year period. A belated recognition of the connection between minimum wage laws and unemployment by government officials has caused some countries to allow their real minimum wage levels to be eroded by inflation, avoiding the political risks of trying to repeal these laws explicitly, when so many voters think of such laws as being beneficial to workers.
They play with the words, you understand what I'm saying? Always pay attention to the words when it comes to politics, especially when it comes to passing laws, alright? They always make it sound good, they sugarcoat it, it's only lipstick on a pig.
Laws are in fact beneficial to those workers who continue to be employed, those who are on the inside looking out, but at the expense of the unemployed who are on the outside looking in. Labor unions also benefit from minimum wage laws and are among the strongest proponents of such laws, even though their own members typically make much more than the minimum wage rate. There is a reason for this. Just as most goods and services can be produced with either much labor and little capital, or vice versa, so can most things be produced using varying proportions of low-skilled labor and high-skilled labor, depending on their relative costs. Thus, experienced unionized workers are competing for employment against younger, inexperienced, and less skilled workers, whose pay is likely to be at or near the minimum wage. The higher the minimum wage goes, the more the unskilled and inexperienced workers are likely to be displaced by more experienced and higher-skilled unionized workers.
And that, in a sense, without you even knowing what a labor union is, this is basic common sense. You gotta keep your ears and eyes open, you understand what I'm saying? Observation is everything.
Just as businesses seek to have government-imposed tariffs on imported goods that compete with their products, so labor unions use minimum wage laws as tariffs to force up the price of non-union labor that competes with their members for jobs. Among 2 million Americans earning no more than the minimum wage in the early 21st century, just over half were from 16 to 24 years of age, and 62% of them worked part-time. Yet political campaigns to increase the minimum wage often talk in terms of providing a living wage sufficient to support a family of 4, such families as most minimum wage workers do not have and would be ill-advised to have before they reach the point where they can feed and clothe their children. The average family income of a minimum wage worker is more than $44,000 a year, far more than can be earned by someone working at minimum wages. But 42% of minimum wage workers live with parents or some other relative.
Wow, that's deep right there, you hear me? Man, we gotta change this up soon. We gotta break this cycle right here.
Only 15% of minimum wage workers are supporting themselves and a dependent, the kind of person envisioned by those who advocate a living wage. Nevertheless, a number of American cities have passed living wage laws, which are essentially local minimum wage laws specifying a higher wage rate than the national minimum wage law. Their effects have been similar to the effects of national minimum wage laws in the United States and other countries. That is, the poorest people have been the ones who have most often lost jobs. The huge financial, political, emotional, and ideological investment of various groups in issues revolving around minimum wage laws means that dispassionate analysis is not always the norm.
Yeah, and these big corporations, they only worry about their money. You understand what I'm saying, baby? Yeah, man. So with that being said, make sure you self-employ yourself, all right? While you working your 9 to 5, get that side hustle. Understand me? Get that tax ID. Take it seriously. Use that money. Invest here. Use this to just grow rich, all right? Now remember, I told you first, all right?
Moreover, the statistical complexities of separating out the effects of minimum wage rates on employment from all the other ever-changing variables which also affect employment mean that honest differences of opinion are possible. However, when all is said and done, most empirical studies indicate that minimum wage laws reduce employment in general, and especially the employment of younger, less skilled, and minority workers. A majority of professional economists surveyed in Britain, Germany, Canada, Switzerland, and the United States agreed that minimum wage laws increase unemployment among low-skilled workers.
Facts.
Economists in France and Austria did not. However, the majority among Canadian economists was 85%, and among American economists was 90%. Dozens of studies of the effects of minimum wages in the United States and dozens more studies of the effects of minimum wages in various countries in Europe, Latin America, the Caribbean, Indonesia, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand were reviewed in 2006 by 2 economists at the National Bureau of Economic Research. They concluded that, despite the various approaches and methods used in these studies, this literature as a whole was one largely solidifying the conventional view that minimum wages reduce employment among low-skilled workers. Those officially responsible for administering minimum wage laws, such as the U.S. Department of Labor and various local agencies, prefer to claim that these laws do not create unemployment.
I mean, at the end of the day, if you're going to force a company to to pay someone a mandatory high minimum, I mean, I'm going to throw away the less skilled dude, and the top tier dude is going to be bumped down. Everyone's going to be bumped down. If you're at the end, you're going to be bumped out. At the end of the day, I mean, you got to understand where the companies are coming from. Yes and no, because at this point, I mean, come on, greed is greed, yo.
So do labor unions, which have a vested interest in such laws as protection for their own members' jobs. In South Africa, for example, The Economist reported, the main union body, the Congress of South African Trade Unions, COSATU, says joblessness has nothing to do with labor laws. The problem, it says, is that businesses are not trying hard enough to create jobs.
And that is the truth, too. That is the truth. A lot of jobs are leaving. You've seen that already, the last 3 years.
In Britain, the Low Pay Commission, which sets the minimum wage, has likewise resisted the idea that the wages it set were responsible for an unemployment rate of 17.3% among workers under the age of 25, at a time when the overall unemployment rate was 7.6%. Even though most studies show that unemployment tends to increase as minimum wages are imposed or increased, those few studies that seem to indicate otherwise have been hailed in some quarters as having refuted this myth. However, one common problem with some research on the employment effects of minimum wage laws is that surveys of employers before and after a minimum wage increase can survey only those particular businesses which survived in both periods. Given the high rates of business failures in many industries, the results for the surviving businesses may be completely different from the results for the industry as a whole. Using such research methods, you could interview people who have played Russian roulette and prove from their experiences that it is a harmless activity.
I like this analogy.
Since those for whom it was not harmless are unlikely to be around to be interviewed. Thus, you would have refuted the myth that Russian roulette is dangerous. Even an activist organization that has been promoting living wage laws, the Association of Community Organizations for Reform Now, ACORN, sought to get its own employees exempted from minimum wage laws. Its argument? The more that ACORN must pay each individual outreach worker, either because of minimum wage or overtime requirements, the fewer outreach workers it will be able to hire.
I hope y'all paying attention. Follow along with me now. He's dropping game.
Outreach worker, either because of minimum wage or overtime requirements, the fewer outreach workers it will be able to hire. It would be comforting to believe that the government can simply decree higher pay for low-wage workers without having to worry about unfortunate repercussions. But the preponderance of evidence indicates that labor is not exempt from the basic economic principle that artificially high prices cause surpluses. In the case of surplus human beings, that can be a special tragedy when they are already from low-income, unskilled, or minority backgrounds and urgently need to get on the job ladder if they are ever to move up the ladder by acquiring experience and skills.
Yeah, man, listen, if you don't have a skill, I feel sorry for you, baby. Not my peoples that's following me, because y'all gonna have some type of skills. That's why y'all on here. For those who don't got no skill, it's a dangerous time we're living in.
Conceivably, the income benefits to those low-wage workers who keep their jobs could outweigh the losses to those who lose their jobs, producing a net benefit to low-income individuals and families as a whole, at least in the short run, ignoring the long-run consequences of a failure of many low-skilled people to acquire job experience and skills, which could be a larger economic loss in the long run than the loss of pay in an entry-level job. But to say that there might conceivably be benefits to low-income people does not mean that this will in fact happen. A study of the effects of minimum wages in Brazil explored this possibility. The purpose of this study is to examine whether the minimum wage in Brazil has beneficial effects on the distribution of family incomes, in particular, raising incomes of low-income families. While such distributional effects are the most common rationale for minimum wages, economic theory makes no prediction that they will occur.
Word, this is crazy. Just when you thought you knew it all and you don't, you understand me? Hey, it's time that we go unlearn and relearn, you understand what I mean? We need to delete all these files that they got embedded in us, and we need to go get the right ones back, you hear me?
Minimum wages are predicted to reduce employment, and research for both Brazil and the United States tends to confirm this prediction. But all this implies is that minimum wages will harm some workers while benefiting others. The distributional effects depend on the magnitudes of the gains and losses, and where they occur in the income distribution, a purely empirical question. Research for the United States finds no gains to low-income families from minimum wage increases, and if anything, increases in poverty. Overall, then, we do not regard the evidence as lending support to the view that minimum wages in Brazil have beneficial distributional effects from the perspective of low-income families. Unemployment varies not only in its quantity as of a given time, It varies also in how long workers remain unemployed.
Yeah, you see that? It's a numbers game. They be screwing with this left and right, man. Listen.
Like the unemployment rate, the duration of unemployment varies considerably from country to country.
I never forget when Obama was the president, he kept extending unemployment and extending it and extending it and extending it. All I was telling myself is, who is he trying to keep making dumb out here? Because ain't no way. I need my own money. I'm sorry.
Countries which drive up labor costs with either high minimum wages or generous employee benefits imposed on employers by law, or both, tend to have longer-lasting unemployment, as well as higher rates of unemployment. In Germany, for example, there is no minimum wage law, but government-imposed mandates on employers, job security laws, and strong labor unions artificially raise labor costs anyway.
Yeah, that's dope.
Unemployment in Germany lasts 12 months or longer for more than half the unemployed, while in the United States, only about 10% of the unemployed stay unemployed that long.
Alright, now you know what to say now, right? Yeah, baby, if you like what you saw, don't forget, make sure you hit that like, smash that subscribe button, and definitely hit the notification bell so you can see when I keep your favorite content on this platform. You understand what I mean? Yeah, baby. So with that being said, I'm open to all suggestions. Put them in the comments. Keep them coming, y'all. I'll see you in the next one. Love.